What's up? This is Yuda for BeatLab Academy. Today it's another episode of Should I Buy It? And we're talking about a new release from Waves, which is a package of 3 plugins for distortion, Fuzz, Overdrive, and Screamer. So let's check them out, see what's good, what's not, should you buy it? So first of all, like any other Waves plugin, we have a mono version and a stereo version, and they're very similar. There's only one difference with the stereo capabilities, almost the same CPU. So for today, we'll just use the stereo versions just to see all the options. So I'm going to load, first of all, we start with Fuzz. And here I'm going to turn it off. Let's bring it to the middle. I'm going to turn it off and let's listen. We have a guitar sound here. Let's listen. This is without effect. And let's turn it on. Okay, so right off the bat, it's a very extreme distortion, and I couldn't find many uses for this for my applications, but that's why we're testing it on a guitar. But if you turn everything down, use it subtly, it can be many great things. So let's check it out. All those packages of plugins do have a similar architecture. So if you know one of them, you kind of know all of them. They just have different circuits, different distortion types. So this one is Fuzz, very extreme. Let's go over it, see what's going on. So first of all, the main distortion is the gain knob. I'm going to turn it down and let's listen. Still very fuzzy. Right here we have the input, how much volume we're bringing into the device. And if we turn it down also, we're going to start hearing less and less distortion, but it's still noisy. Okay. Excellent. You can always put another gain volume knob before the plugin to control the gain structure even better. So this is the input, and the signal chain of this plugin is it goes through the input, then to the dynamics, then to the gain distortion section, looping back to the dynamics, EQ, which we'll cover, and then going out to the output. So right here we also have a low cut, which is a high pass filter, so we can cut some lows, which will change how the distortion is reacting, because a lot of times when you distort to the lows, it might sound too gooey, the sound will break down too much, and so on. So let's listen if that does anything to hear. Nice, we can definitely hear a difference. And now it's only distorting kind of the loudest volume sounds, or the highest notes. Excellent. Here we have the mode, which right now it's on stereo, so it's going to affect everything, the mids and the sides, or the mono and the stereo. If you load the mono version, you won't have that option, of course, because it's only available in the stereo version of this plugin. The mid or the mono will only affect the mid signal, and the sides will only affect the sides, the stereo, which is great. We also have a separate input, regardless of the main input volume gain. We also have the input for just the sides or just the mids if you select them. So let's see if that does anything. And I do believe this is mono. So let me add another plugin here. We're going to go, this is from Polyverse called Wider. Actually going to widen it so we can hear something happening on the sides. Nice. So if you can hear the mids, or the mid sound doesn't get affected at all, it only affects the sides. Waves did release a tutorial video, really great, on distorting vocals, and they have layers of vocals there that are hard panned, and they only distort in the sides, which can be a really great way of controlling the amount of distortion. Okay, nice. Right here again, it's the main gain knob. This is like how much we're actually distorting. Everything is being represented in display here, represents the distortion curve. We have 2 types of distortion. Let's listen to them. So A is definitely, on at least this guitar, much more fuzzier. The B is a bit cleaner and a bit more precise. Let's take it with B. Right here we have the HD, which will turn on oversampling. It's going to be ×8 oversampling, so everything that happens inside the plugin will have more resolution for the plugin to do whatever it needs to do for the distortion. So it will result in a slightly cleaner, less noisy sound. It's up to you if you want to turn it up or not. A bit cleaner, a bit noisier and grittier. Here we have the Octave, which is probably the coolest thing about this plugin, which will result in a higher octave distortion or lower octave. So it will actually introduce higher octave sounds. They're not pitch tracked, so it might be off tune, but really cool stuff. Let me turn down the gain so it's not too much, but let's listen to the high and the down. And you can control how much and what's the mix here with this circular control. Really awesome stuff. It's kind of like a Octave pedal mixed with a fuzz. So super awesome stuff. I love that. Down can really beef up a lot of different elements, even try it on your bass if you need more higher harmonics, higher octaves, vocals, everything. This Octave can be used tremendously. So this is great stuff, the Octave. Probably my favorite feature here. Now, I do want to say before I move on, this is a bit too extreme for me, the fuzz itself. I'm sure it's great on more heavier things that need a type of distortion, like heavier bass music or heavier rock music. But for my applications, I couldn't find a lot of uses for the fuzz. It's a tiny bit too hardcore, although again, you can just turn down the input, turn down the gain, and just use it very subtly. And again, we also have a mix knob that you can just mix in the results. So I'm sure we can find many applications that we just use it very subtle to just bring in things in the mix, get them to be a bit brighter with a bit more harmonics. Okay, in the middle, we have the dynamic section, which is a really great addition. Essentially, it's a compressor. First of all, we have two modes, the punch and the rider. The punch is a fixed compressor. You have three modes. All of them will change the timing, the knee, attack, and release of the compressor. So let's blend it in and listen. So that will make sure that all the distortion is getting boosted back up with volume, so it's consistent with our end result. And we can also see the display here, displaying all the different dynamics behavior. The rider will give us a threshold, which will only distort in high values, will only distort the loudest signals and won't touch the lowest volume signals. And as we turn it down, we'll start distorting everything. Let's turn it down a bit. So we can hear just a tiny bit on the top notes. It will be great to add a feature to reverse that behavior, just on the lowest notes to lowest volume notes to distort, which would be great. So that's the dynamic section. Here we have the blend knob, how much dynamics we're actually blending. So really great stuff. This is very useful to make sure your gain structure, when you add in all the distortion, somewhat staying consistent or having it more dynamic to respond to the incoming volume. The bottom here, we have the EQ section. We have a low shelf and a high shelf. This is very useful if you are using the low cut, and it is going to be pre-distortion, so it's going to cut the lows, so you can introduce them back in with the low shelf. We check out the overdrive on a bass sound, so I'll show you that. So low shelf, high shelf, and here we have two bell filters. Let's bring up the low mids. And let me turn off the wider effect, so we keep it back in mono. And here we have A, B, and C. Those are just the kind of the width of the bell filters. And it does sounds like introducing some notch filtering as well, maybe as part of the width of those bell filters. So you can boost some low mids, some low highs, just to bring back whatever tone structure you need for your sound. Down here, the main output and the mix, right? If you want to mix it back in, just a tiny bit. And the temperature is unrelated to the EQ section. It's just a separate tone control. So if you bring it up, if you warm it up, it's going to be a bit darker, a bit warmer. And if you bring it down, it's going to have a bit more high frequency, a bit more sparkly. Let's bring it up so we can hear it. So next to tone control, temperature, which is nice to call it like that, warming it up or cooling it down, basically making it brighter. So very cool stuff. So that's the fuzz. If you need heavy distortion, this thing is really great, very useful, for heavy distortion, but once again, for me personally, I couldn't find many uses for it because it's quite extreme. But let's check out the next one in the package. I'm gonna this time go with the bass. Let's listen to the bass dry. And let's load the overdrive. So that's right out of the bat, we can already hear doing a lot to the sound. The overdrive is a soft clipper, which can of course overdrive if you push it hard, but it's have the same type of structure as the fuzz, and it's a slightly less hardcore, less extreme type of distortion, but almost the same controls. I did forgot to mention on the fuzz, we do get, like any other Waves plugin, a lot of really great presets here from a lot of famous mixing engineers and artists, and of course the factory for just some general applications. So this can be great on anything, but let's turn down the gain. And here again, we have the input, we have stereo, mid and side mode, which will enable the volume, the input volume of the mid or the sides, depends on what you select. And we have a low cut. Now the low cut will make a big difference here because we're distorting bass. So let's listen to that. Let's keep it on 12. Also here we have two separate EQ types, A and B. Let's listen to them. So a different type of tone, also the visualizer represent the distortion curve. Here's the HD, the oversampling, times 8 oversampling, so we have more resolution, resulting in a cleaner, less noisy sound. It's up to you if you want to turn it on and off. We have the dynamic section, exactly the same controls, the punch, fixed compressor, you can change the timing with it, changing the knee, attack and release, the blend, how much you blend in the dynamic section, and the rider, which we have a threshold, basically canceling those three modes, and we have a threshold here to decide how much, what are the signals that we're distorting. The loudest signals, all of them, depends on where the threshold is. EQ section with the same thing, low, high, and low shelf, high shelf, and then two bell filters with different widths, A, B, and C. So this one is also, I would say, even more capable because kind of it's in between those two plugins, the first one and the last one we're going to talk about. So I love this one. It can be great for almost anything in small amounts. You can also have the mix knob, you can mix it in. You have the temperature, so the temperature can kind of move it from kind of a more darker, smoother sound on hot temperature, and in cold temperature, more high frequencies, more present sound. All right, we can hear that. Nice. This can be even great. You can test it out as parallel mastering. So just put it in a parallel track for mastering. Just a tiny bit, just to add that grit that is associated with modern records. You can try to test it out. Probably parallel bus, mix bus, and not on the mastering itself. But check it out. Really great stuff. This one, probably my favorite out of the three. And I also like the interface. All the interfaces can be a bit daunting at first, but once you understand the architecture of this, very straightforward, very simple. So this is the MDMX Overdrive. Let's check out the last one. Let's go with drums. So the last one is called Screamer. I have this drum bass here, it's off, but let me just delete that. This one is called Screamer, and it's probably the simplest. Now it can just be kind of like a booster, just to boost the volume and everything. You don't need to do too much to it. To just boost it, just turn everything down, bring a bit of gain, a bit of input. But this one is very straightforward. And the presets here are also great, really great stuff. Let's listen to it out of the bat on the drums. So this is without. And with. Okay, so a bit hardcore. Let's turn down the input a bit. Let's turn down the gain. Nice. So again, we have stereo mode, mono or mid sides, and we have a separate input for them if we select them. This is, again, not available in the mono version of these plugins. The main control is the gain. Right, kind of the least abrasive out of those three. We do have a boost switch here, just boost the signal completely to push it all the way. And it does result in more extreme results. Just add like 6 dB, I think, something like that, of the mid frequencies. Nice. We have the tone control, just kind of brighten it up or making it more dark. Controls the treble and bass frequencies. Again, HD for oversampling. Output, mix knob, and the temperature. The temperature here, how they describe it, is basically a more roomier sound. So if you heat it up, it might sound a bit more distant, kind of in a room, but darker and warmer. While if you cool it down, more presence. And as Waves mention it, more articulation to the sound as well. Let's mix it in. Boost the output a tiny bit. Nice. And again, comes with great presets. We can even go through a few of them. That's really nice. Adds kind of dirtiness, which is nice. Also nice. So those are the three plugins: Screamer, Overdrive, and Fuzz. If you need distortions, like a lot of distortion in your music, this is a great package. For me, I need to turn them down a lot and use them very subtly for a good result that I like, because noise coming in instantly like that, it just makes everything much just dirtier, which for my uses, I don't need it so much. I just want things to be warmer and bigger and fatter, which it can definitely do, but it is a bit too much straight out of the box. I would say that the Fuzz Octave option is amazing. I love it, and it's really cool combination with the Fuzz. You can create some really nasty tones, and I'm super excited to try it on vocals. I tried it on everything except vocals, but I'm sure the Octaver can be really awesome effect on octaves. So should you buy it? Only if you need distortion plugins. It's a good package. It covers everything. Of course, for more creative effects and for mixing, but for mixing, you will have to use it in a very subtle way. So that's it. Waves MDMX package of distortions. Let me know in the comment section if you use it, if you like it, what do you think? That's it. Catch you next time.